Mr. Kunitz. That was absolutely wonderful.
There we are, and here's your lovely pen. Thank you.
We were really in the woods 20 years ago. We didn't understand the fundamental nature of brain aging. We thought that to get senile, to sort of lose your marbles as you got older, was just a normal part of life. That's really not how brain aging works.
There was such a great pulse of life and affection coming back from that audience. It was hard to resist.
And I loved hearing about your mother.
Stanley, if all of my patients were like you, I'd be starving.
Thinking about you. Sometimes a name slips you. That seems to be the most. Or you don't remember where you put something down. Little occasional bits of memory vanish from the screen. On the other hand, some memories go deeper than ever before. They are profoundly embedded in your whole psychic structure. They form a constellation that is at the center of your imagination. Summer is late, my heart. Words plucked out of the air some 40 years ago, when I was wild with love and torn almost in two, scatter like leaves this night of whistling wind and rain. It is my heart that's late. It is my song that's flown.
Some people's brains will age slowly, some will age more rapidly. A big factor is the genetic factor, what's built in. The other factor is the maintenance of activity. And if the aging person remains active, there's ample evidence to indicate that his intellectual functioning will decrease at a much slower rate, and maybe not decrease at all.
Poetry is an exercise of the spirit within one. And every time you exercise it, you increase your vitality.
Most people aren't poets.
Mm-hmm.
They may enjoy poetry.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So what do they do, if they're not poets, to stay vital and connected and as alive as you are?
To care about the life, to care about others, to remain active. For example, you plant the seed, you cultivate the soil, you watch it flower. You're participating in an ancient ritual of life itself. I kneel to the crickets trilling underfoot, as if about to burst from their crusty shells. And like a child again, marvel to hear so clear and brave a music pour from such a small machine. What makes the engine go? Desire, desire, desire.
As scientists learn more about how the aging brain works, they are overturning some of the central dogmas of neuroscience itself. For decades, neuroscientists believed that neurons in a fully developed brain never reproduce themselves and can never be replaced.
The idea was that the brain is a very complex structure. It's involved in learning and memory and storing large amounts of information. And if you were adding new neurons into the circuit over time, it would somehow disrupt the function of the brain.
But in 1998, at the Salk Institute in California, neuroscientist Fred Gage and his colleagues discovered that even into old age, the human brain continues producing new neurons. Like the neurons that form a baby's brain, they are created by the division of stem cells, the seeds from which the tissues of the body grow.
Everybody was astonished that our brain makes new nerve cells late in life. The assumption was that you had all the nerve cells you were going to have when you were younger, and then you would lose them and you would never be able to replace them.
Stem cells in an embryonic brain are wildly prolific, producing hundreds of different kinds of neurons, enabling us to see, smell, walk, think, remember. But in an adult brain, very few neurons are produced. Most stem cells mysteriously stay inactive. As neuroscientists look to the future, they have begun asking if these stem cells can be directed to make neurons to replace those killed by injury or disease.
And that's very exciting, because it opens up the idea that the brain is not this fixed machine for which there are no replacement parts.
Look at my fingers where they're almost touching.
At Harvard Medical School in Boston, Dr. Jeffrey Maklis works with patients with neurological disorders. 48-year-old Sally Carlson has Parkinson's disease.
Okay, and look over at the frame again.
Which typically begins in middle age and grows steadily worse as a person gets older.
Good. Now, can you open your eyes again? And walk over there. Can you do it on the tightrope?
Deep inside her brain, in a region that coordinates movements, thousands of neurons are slowly dying. Sally's body is starting to feel stiff. Her hands sometimes tremble.
Folding clothes is probably the worst thing, and that it's a constant reminder, because obviously with 3 kids I'm folding a lot of clothes. But I can't shake things anymore. I can't shake a pillow into a pillowcase. I can't. Just pulling up is a very difficult thing to do. I think you're in shock when you first find something like this out.
Yeah.
I was scared to death. And I know I'm not dying. But part of me is dying. There's no doubt about that. Love you.
Maklis can relieve some of Sally's symptoms with medications, but not forever.
Ultimately, 10 or 20 years down the road, there are going to be enough neurons that have died that no combination of medicines is going to be fully effective. Now, how about doing the padding on this side? She's understood from the very beginning that our goal is to get her through the childhood of her children to their graduations and weddings before we start losing the efficacy of the drugs that we currently have. Now, can you put your hands out, palms straight up, and spread your fingers apart?
By the time Sally reaches her 60s, she may have trouble even walking.
And then back to where they are.
But Maklis hopes that someday, science can develop a treatment to restore her lost abilities by tapping the potential of stem cells.
Different.
Maklis is not only a doctor, he's a research scientist.
Yeah, these are normal adult sections.
If there's a possibility to replace and interconnect new neurons within circuitry that's imperfect, that gives a whole different view toward repair of the nervous system.